Hello, my name is Richard. I'm the pastor of the King's Church in Addleston in Surrey, and our theme at the moment is learning how to speak. Now, you may think, well, I can talk, I can put some words together, string a sentence together, I know how to speak. But yes, we can all do that. But what I'm talking about more is how to speak in a way that brings life to the people around you, how to edify and how to bless those with the words that you say. And today's topic is how to give an appropriate response. Now, before I start, I'm going to tell you a story. Many of you will know I'm a musician, and I have played in many bands and ensembles over the years. And there's one band in particular that they're like my jazz brothers. There's a jazz quartet called the Kairos Ensemble, kairosensemble.com if you want to go and check out the website. And I've been playing with them for more years than I care to remember. Now, back in the early days, we would get together to have like these all morning, sometimes all day type rehearsals, get up early, have breakfast together and do the rehearsal. This is before we had responsibilities and we could just do that kind of thing. Now, I was kind of new to this because I was a classically trained musician, which meant a rehearsal, if you said 9 o'clock start for the rehearsal, that meant get there before 9 o'clock, you warm up, you make sure your instrument's working, and at 9 o'clock you start on the dot and you go till, let's say, 11 or 12, and then you stop. That's the job done. That's the rehearsal over, and that's a rehearsal. Now, jazz works slightly differently. You might say, no, you would never say rehearse at 9, but you might say that. But anyway, you would say start at 9, let's say, hypothetically. Now, what I would find is I would get there maybe good an hour, half an hour early, get warmed up, but that doesn't happen in the jazz world. You get there at 9, or before 9, get there at 9, and there's a drummer maybe just getting stuff out of the car, ready to set up. Maybe within the next hour, most of the people might arrive. To actually get playing by 10, maybe. That's my experience of pretty much every jazz rehearsal I've been in. Forgive me if you're a jazz musician out there listening to this and it's different for you, but that's just my experience. Anyway, it was the same with Kairos Ensemble. We would get together, we'd have lots of coffee, chat a bit, have a few biscuits, a bit more coffee, maybe have a bit to eat again, and then maybe set up and then maybe play a bit, and then when the first person needed to go, that was when it ended. That's how rehearsals went. Anyway, this is one particular time. We were rehearsing at one of the band members, I'm not going to say which one, his house. We got there early for breakfast, supposedly. I'd driven about an hour to get there. I got there and found that my host, the band member who was hosting this rehearsal, was still asleep. Okay, never mind. His housemate let me in. The others arrived, still asleep. So we had a bit of breakfast, had a bit of a chat. Thought, okay, well, we'll just wait for him to get up. End of all of that, still asleep. So what do we do? Now, my approach was to knock loudly on the door, shout, wakey, wakey, it's time to get up, and generally make a lot of noise and a bit of fuss, because if I'm honest, I was quite annoyed about the situation. I'd driven all this way and I wanted to rehearse because I'm classically trained, and that wasn't happening. That was my approach. The pianist in the band, some of you will know him well, his approach was this. He said, no, what we need to do, make a cup of tea, knock gently on the door, go in, open the curtains, and just leave the tea there and just let him kind of drift into awakeness, kind of. That'll be the best way. Now, if I had the technology, you could press the red button, you could select which one of those two ways you would choose to get this fella out of bed. I don't have that technology, and I'll tell you now, we went with not my approach, we went with the pianist approach. The rehearsal happened. The guy got up and we managed to get him into a good mood, and we're still friends. We're still friends. Now, why am I telling you that? Well, believe it or not, the scriptures actually speak pretty much directly into that situation. Let me read you something from the Proverbs. It says this: "He who greets a neighbour in a loud voice first thing in the morning is reckoned a curse." He who greets his neighbour in a loud voice first thing in the morning is reckoned a curse. I think what it's speaking about is that our timing and our manner of our words is important. What may be intended as a blessing can be a curse if the timing and the manner isn't right. There's another proverb that says something rather similar. It says this: like one who takes away a coat on a cold day, or like vinegar poured on soda, is one who sings songs to a heavy heart. The point is this, we need to find an appropriate way of speaking in our situation. And often, timing is everything. We may have something very true to say about a situation or a person, and what we want to say, it's right on, but is it right for that moment, that actual moment? I'll give you an example. Some parents can relate to this. Imagine the scenario, possibly slightly exaggerated, but we've all been there if we're parents. You're just busy minding your own business in the house, and you hear this screaming sound. A child runs in the back door, there's blood gushing out their head, tears coming out their eyes, there's snot, and it's loud, it's ah! And you discover what's happened, and you feel in that moment it's the right time to start on a lecture about the health and safety procedures of riding your bike off the garage roof onto the trampoline whilst filming yourself on the mobile phone and not wearing a helmet. That seems to be the moment to tell the child, what were you thinking, you stupid idiot? Why were you doing this? But with hindsight and maybe a little bit of reflection, we think that maybe checking the child's injuries, maybe speaking some comforting and reassuring words would be the thing to say in that moment, the important thing that needs to be spoken right there and then. What do they need to hear in that moment? What do they need to hear in that time? Do they really need to hear in that moment that they're a stupid fool? In fact, do they need to hear at any time that they're a stupid fool? Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't warn and teach our children how to assess danger and risk, and to speak about how to do things safely and responsibly, and to maybe talk through some of the negatives of riding a bike off a garage and onto something else. Yeah, of course, talk about those things with your children. But what I am saying is that timing is something to factor in. Speaking the truth in love, as the scriptures encourage us, involves a certain amount of timing. Or else we can be someone who is greeting another person with a loud voice first thing in the morning, and we become a curse rather than a blessing. And so can I suggest that giving a lecture to someone about how they could have done things differently or better in the immediate aftermath of their own personal failure, when there's been an accident that's been their fault, or they've done something and it's caused a relationship breakdown, or they've made a wrong decision and they're just stewing in the immediate aftermath of that, to speak right there and then is not always ever helpful, to give those lectures there and then. I mean, do we really think that people don't realise their own mistakes? Do we really think that people don't feel enough self-generated shame and pity for their own failures? Do we feel that we have the right to make sure that they really know the fullness of their inadequacy? Is that our responsibility to put that on them right there and then? And if so, what is our motivation when we say things like that? Is love our motivation genuinely when we speak in those ways? Do our words and our righteous lessons come from something inside us that maybe we just need to be right ourselves, or we may need to justify our own actions? Now, again, I'm not saying we shouldn't challenge people and that we shouldn't speak to them about behaviours that we see that are wrong, or actions and their speech that isn't right, but timing is important. And if love is the thing that undergirds our motivation, then I think that actually timing is important in what we're doing. To speak the truth in love involves a bit of timing. Now, learning to give an appropriate response to a person or a situation will involve preferring that other person. It will involve putting them and their needs before ours, particularly when that person is struggling or in difficulty. And often there are things that we think, I really need to say this. And if that's the case, you need to find a time and a place to do that. Maybe not even to the person involved, just to get it out of the system. But we need to continually ask, what do the people that I'm with need to hear right now? Do the people that you're with, if they're struggling with their family and they've got difficulties with their children, do they really need to hear how amazing your children are and how well they are doing at school at this moment in time? Do they need to hear that right now? I'll let you decide. Do you really need to tell people about, or just rant on about how, I don't know, the price of Manchego cheese in Waitrose, how outrageous it's gone up, did you know? When the people that you're speaking to are in this situation where there's crippling debt and they can't even afford just the basics and the essentials. Do you really need to talk about that? Do they need to hear it? Do people really need to hear about your stubbed toe, your little toe that you hurt in the bathroom that time when they've just broken their leg? Yeah, I've had this number of times where somebody's got this catastrophic injury or illness, and somebody else goes, "Oh yeah, I know how you feel," and then they kind of come along with some really small and insignificant thing by comparison, and they feel somehow that relates to that, and so by talking a lot about this will comfort this person. In fact, they're just talking about their thing. Oh, when I stubbed my toe or I bruised my thigh, yeah, I know how your broken leg feels. I don't know whether you do. We need to ask, what can I say? And how can I say it? And when can I say it? So that it be a blessing and not a curse. We don't want to be people that when we speak, it's like we're stripping off a coat on someone else when it's a cold day. Or like we're pouring vinegar onto soda and there's this fizzing, corroding thing that happens. That when we speak, our words just eat away at people's self-confidence or their self-esteem and self-worth. And sometimes we'll find ourselves in a situation with people where we're lost for words. Things can be so overwhelming, either in a good way or in a bad way, that we just don't know what to say. But I think actually being lost for words is not a bad thing. It's often when we try and force words out and we don't know what to say, but we say something anyway, that we say the most inappropriate things, don't we? It's like, oh no, why did I say that? But I think there are times when actually just being silent with a person or saying very little is the best and most appropriate response. Just sitting with a person in grief, just being there with them, is actually a more appropriate response than trying to fix the problems you can't fix. When something's just amazing happening, you may be watching open mouth at something and witness something completely astonishing. You may be with people and just let it happen. Let everyone just enjoy it. You don't need to give a running commentary on what's going on. Just let your words be few in those kind of situations. Too often we have this need inside us to say something. We don't like the silence, but sometimes the most appropriate response is to speak very little, if at all. And so to wrap all this up, I want to give you one more verse from the scriptures. It's a verse that's actually intrigued me for many years, if I'm honest. It's in the context of the scripture itself is trying to encourage the readers to speak to other people in ways that will bring edification and blessing. And so it says this, it says, "Speak to one another with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs." Now, I've often wondered about that. Why psalms and hymns and spiritual songs? Why not just say churchy songs, just the lyrics from those songs we sing at church? Why differentiate between psalms and hymns and spiritual songs? Maybe there is a difference in those songs, maybe not. But I think in the context of what we've been talking about today, maybe it's about finding the thing that it's appropriate for that person at that time. And using those different types of songs, we might find a different content and a different style in which to speak, which would be appropriate to the right here and now for that person. So sometimes we will need to speak with real depth and profound meaning, and you might need to find something in the songs of the church to speak that, because I don't know whether we always have that depth in ourselves, but to use the hymns and the songs of the church to speak some depth and to speak some meaning to someone's life. Sometimes it may call for some kind of mournful lament in the way we speak, or some kind of empathy in the sorrow of what they're going through. And we will find that also in the variety of the songs of the scriptures and of the church. And then sometimes There will be the need to speak with great passion and energy and words of joy and praise and excitement and anticipation and hope, because that's what needs to be happening at that moment. That's what the words that people need to hear. You know, learning to speak in this way is actually an exciting thing. It gives us the opportunity to think, you know, I can bring transformation to people around me. If I speak appropriately, then I will be able to speak words of life and of blessing to those around me. And as we conclude this message, I just want to again point you to the one whose responses are always most appropriate, and that person is Jesus. As you read through the pages of the scriptures and you look at how Jesus responds to people, you will see it is always the best response. Sometimes he will tell a story. Sometimes he will question the questioners. Sometimes he will challenge and say something thought-provoking. In everything, his words are wise and his words are true. And in everything, when he's responding to somebody who is caught in their own failure or their own sin, it is always full of grace and it is always full of love. And so we pray, Jesus, help us, teach us to learn how to speak like you.